They live in conscious neglect of God, full of themselves and empty of God. And these are David's enemies. And they hate him, he says in verse 17. And they're out to get him. His enemies are near. But his God seems to be far away. At least it feels that way to David. The opening 6 verses are full of reasoning, pleading that God would hear him. It seems to betray the insecurity of a man crying out to God from earth. And yet he's frightened. There's nobody listening in heaven. Ever feel like that? It's like that cell phone commercial when the person's on the phone saying, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? And listen to David, he says, bow down your ear, O Lord. He feels as if God's ear is up there in the heavens and God can't hear him and God won't hear him. He wants God to bow down his ear to listen to him. Answer me, he says. Give ear, verse 6. He's praying to a God who seems to have no ears. Open your ears. The second part of verse 6, give heed, is a word that in the Hebrew means to pay attention. Lord, pay attention to me. He's been crying out to God all day long, he says. In verse 3. And that's our great struggle in prayer, isn't it? If you're honest. We get down on our knees and we feel nobody's listening. You call out to God and it seems as if your words bounce off the ceiling. Ever feel like that? It's the great problem that makes prayer difficult for me. We call out to God on earth. We wonder, is anyone paying attention to our words? And if that's the way you feel when you pray this evening, the Holy Spirit has given you a psalm to let you know that you aren't alone when you feel like that. That even great David prayed without a sense at times that God was listening to him. And the Psalms are full of these kinds of expressions. Lord, don't hide your face from me. Lord, how long will you forget me? Forever, David says. And yet, isn't it true that our doctrine of inspiration tells us that God was much nearer to David than he felt? Because God, the Holy Spirit, is inspiring David to write these words about a God he's praying to who seems not to be listening. God was nearer than David felt him to be. And if that teaches you and me anything about prayer this evening, it surely is this, that you should not let your feelings get in the way of your praying. You might feel God's far away. But faith is the ability to reach through those feelings and to lay hold of what you know is true, not because you feel it, but because God says it. His ears are always open unto the cry of the righteous.